When I was starting out mixing live gigs, I would just slap some reverb on the vocal and call it quits. Surprise, surprise, that did not sound good. I'd wish I'd known that there were 3 building blocks to a great mix, and those blocks are 1. Levels, 2. Processing, that's EQ, compression, etc., and 3. Effects, that's reverb and things like that. Getting a great reverb sound then is crucial to getting a good mix overall. But you've got to do a lot more than just turn the reverb up if you want your mixes to sound truly professional. In this video, we're going to break down 3 tips that you can follow to create the perfect vocal reverb for your shows. If we've not met yet, then I'm Andrew and I mix live music for a living. And if your first complaint is either that your reverb sounds harsh or muddy, then that's an EQ problem. You can fix that by grabbing my free guide, 3 Steps to Perfect EQ. I'll leave that in the description below. But for now, let's dive in. Okay, the first tip is that you need to have multiple reverbs. Reverb is not a one-size-fits-all kind of situation. You get reverbs in lots of different types and lots of different lengths. You can get a plate reverb, a hall reverb, a chamber reverb, and inside those categories of reverb, you can get short reverbs, medium reverbs, long reverbs. And this is usually altered by adjusting the decay time. You'll find a setting in your reverbs which allows you to adjust the decay time. So start off by thinking about what the source material is, what the singer or the vocalist is singing. If it's a kind of slow ballad with really long legato phrases, with a lot of space in between them, then you should opt for a longer reverb, right? Try using something like a hall with like a 2.2 second decay time on it. The other thing that you can adjust to create a longer reverb time is you can add pre-delay. That's a little bit of time, a few milliseconds before that reverb actually kicks in, and it just helps separate that big long reverb from the actual vocal itself and make it seem quite separate. On the flip side of that, if you have really quick fire words, quick fire lyrics, aggressive stuff like rap maybe, then you want to opt for a shorter reverb. You could still stick with your hall, or you could grab something like a plate or a chamber, and you could bring that down to something like 1.2 seconds, 1.5 seconds. I would consider that a fairly short reverb. Of course, if you're looking for something in the middle, aim for something like 1.8. A great starting point for me every time is a hall reverb at 1.8 seconds. You're also not limited to just using one of these reverbs at a time. You can have multiple reverb engines running at once, say a long hall, a medium plate, and a short plate, and you can blend all of them together to get yourself the sound that you desire. And so I like quite a lot of the time to have a mixture of a hall and a plate reverb to give me a little more texture on that vocal channel. While we're talking about long and short reverbs, it's also important to tailor your reverb to the room that you're mixing in. If you're in a cavernous church, then you probably don't need that big long reverb because the vocal is going to be getting lost in the natural reverb anyway. So when picking a reverb, pay attention to the source material, choose a reverb that matches the source, but also choose a reverb that matches the room and the space that you're in. My last little trick for that is also remember that delay is an effect as well. I know we're talking about reverb here, but having a delay on hand can really help you amp up big moments in choruses. And a quick announcement, I've started offering coaching for live sound. So if you want to be the best live sound engineer that you can be, then I want to help you do that. You can click a link in the description down below and you can book a free 15-minute call with me and we can just chat about like what you need and how I can help you, make a plan for how we're going to work together going forward, and see if I can get you any quick wins then and there. And full transparency, I'm just really trying to learn more about how to help you. So I'm offering these for like pretty rock bottom prices just now. So if you want to work directly with me, then click the link below and book a free 15-minute call. Anyway, back to the video. Tip number 2 is to have a reverb strategy, right? That is like, think about how you're going to set up your mixer to use your reverbs before you actually start mixing the show. Take some time to get to know the reverbs that are available on the mixer that you're using, because most mixers have different reverbs and they all sound a little bit different. Some mixers have pretty trashy, horrible sounding reverbs and you've got to do a lot of fine tuning and EQ to make them sound reasonable. Other mixers have quite nice sounding reverbs out the gate and you can just turn it up and pretty much get going. So I would advise you before you start a show to get your talkback microphone out, send it out of your main speakers and send your vocal to the reverb unit that you're thinking about using. Dial in a reverb time that suits that room, pick a reverb style that suits that room, and then apply some EQ to the return channel for that reverb as well. That way you can get it sounding a bit closer to how you want before you even get the artist on the stage. I'd recommend setting up DCAs, or if you're using something like Allen Heath, getting the actual return channels available on the mixer surface. I don't know why they're down here in my example. This is not a mixer. This is just my own desk. Get some DCAs or the return channels of the reverb on the mixer real estate so that you can ride those faders while you are mixing the show. Some people like to have the reverb send available on the surface so they can turn the send up and down and affect the amount of vocal that's being sent into the reverb while they're mixing the show. But I quite like to have the reverb return on the mixer so that I can turn the amount up and down that's coming out of the reverb unit itself. And the reason that I do that is because I don't want to mess with any reverb that might be going to an artist's in-ear mix, if that's something we've got, or even on a stage monitor if they've asked for reverb in their monitors. And another thing you can do when you're preparing your mixer and your reverb and effects for the show is if you have any rotary encoders or soft keys available on the mixer, why don't you set some of them to be the decay time of the reverbs that you have available? That way, if you really, really want to fine tune the reverb to each and every song, when the artist starts singing, you can just reach over and have the decay time ready to go and just make fine adjustments to that decay time while you're mixing the show. That way you've got the control of the amount of reverb with the fader that you've just set up and the length of the reverb that you have available on the rotary encoders. My third tip is to use reverb plugins for a few reasons. One, consistency. If you are moving about from venue to venue, say you're a house tech, but you want to get a reputation as someone who delivers a consistently great mix every single time, then you can't turn up and find that it's a terrible, crappy little mixer and that you don't have any good reverbs, because reverb, like I said, is one of the building blocks of a great mix. So take your reverb with you. If you have your computer with you, then you know that you're going to get the same reverbs every single time. And if that's a reverb you like, or even one that you're just comfortable working with, then it's going to get you quicker and more consistent because there are less variables. All you need to know how to do is how to route the reverb send out of your mixer into your laptop and back into a return channel on the mixer. And I've made a video about that, which I'll link up here or in the description down below. Another reason you might want to use reverb plugins is that it gives you access to even more reverbs, right? Like maybe you've only got 4 effect slots or something available on your mixer, but on your laptop, you can have another 4 reverbs that you can send to. And you don't need to worry too much about the latency of sending to and from the laptop because you're using a plugin which is adding a sort of time smearing element to it. So no one's going to notice if the reverb is actually several milliseconds later than it would have been in the desk, because that's desirable in a sense. For example, I worked on a show with an artist a few days ago and their front of house engineer had a laptop running like 3 different delays that they were using for the front of house mix, and then they were only using the onboard effects for reverb for the in-ear monitors for the artist themselves. I think generally across the board, the quality of reverbs that's just built into a mixer is pretty poor actually. But you can check out emulations by Valhalla for sort of older plate and digital reverbs, and they sound really, really cool. Or you can check out Seventh Heaven by Liquid Sonics, which is an emulation of the Brocasti M7, which is probably the best sounding reverb that I've ever heard. So I would recommend that you check that out if you're looking for a really, really lovely sounding reverb. Even just get a demo of some of these and try them out and you will probably be surprised at the difference in quality. So leave a comment down below and let me know what your reverb strategy is, and I will leave a link up here to another video I made a while ago about mixing the best vocals that you can live. For now, goodbye.